All Vikings, let's win this game.
Four major questions are hanging over the Vikings, and not all of them have comfortable answers. Did Minnesota leave its backfield one player short? How long can the defense wait for Harrison Smith? Could losing the quarterback competition actually push J.J. McCarthy out of Minnesota? And did the Vikings just watch Jalen Nailor leave right before the biggest breakout of his career? There is also a potential trade target who could address one of the roster's clearest weaknesses. These stories may look separate, but together they reveal how much uncertainty Kevin O'Connell and the front office must resolve before the season begins. The Vikings spent the offseason promising to strengthen their rushing attack, but there is one concern that no coaching change can completely erase. This backfield may still be one proven player short. Minnesota averaged 4.5 yards per carry last season, its most efficient mark of the Kevin O'Connell era. Even so, the Vikings ranked just 27th in the NFL with 410 rushing attempts. Some of that volume came after the offense was scaled back to help J.J. McCarthy over the final 5 games. That leaves an uncomfortable question. When the pressure rises, does O'Connell truly trust his running game? The additions of offensive line coach Keith Carter and assistant head coach Frank Smith could help. Smith served as Mike McDaniel's offensive coordinator in Miami and understands how to design a productive rushing attack. But even the right scheme still needs the right players. Jordan Mason returns after recording 758 yards and 6 touchdowns on 159 carries. His 56% success rate was encouraging, but his passing game involvement was minimal, with only 14 receptions for 51 yards and no touchdowns. That limitation may explain why he played 63.5% of Minnesota's offensive snaps through the first 7 weeks before falling to 29.4% from weeks 8 through 16. Aaron Jones benefited from that decline, but he now enters his age 32 season after appearing in only 12 games in 2025 because of hamstring, shoulder, ankle, and hip injuries. Then there is 6th-round pick Demon Claiborne. Jones compared his burst to Detroit Lions star Jahmyr Gibbs, which immediately raised expectations. But Claiborne also posted a 29.9 pass-blocking grade and committed 5 fumbles on 179 attempts. As Ty Chandler learned, speed will not keep a running back on the field in O'Connell's offense if he cannot protect the quarterback or secure the football. Xavier Scott provides capable depth, but he does not erase the larger concern. Minnesota reportedly showed interest in Travis Etienne and examined the markets for Kenneth Walker III and Kenneth Gainwell before they signed elsewhere. That matters because it suggests the Vikings understood something was missing, yet still entered the season without filling the gap. Maybe Mason matches last year's production. Maybe Jones stays healthy. Maybe Claiborne immediately supplies the explosive element this offense needs. But Minnesota is counting on all 3 possibilities working together. And if the new rushing scheme succeeds on paper, but the Vikings still cannot convert in short yardage situations, they may realize too late that this was the offseason to be more aggressive. If Minnesota may have waited too long to reinforce its backfield, the defense is now waiting on a decision only Harrison Smith can make. The veteran safety has not announced whether he will play another season, and Alec Lewis of The Athletic made it clear that the situation remains completely up in the air. According to Lewis, there is no firm timeline. The decision will depend on how Smith feels physically and mentally, while the Vikings appear willing to give him a blank canvas and allow him to choose his own path. At 37 years old, Smith could return shortly before the season, join the team a few weeks into the schedule to preserve his body, or decide that his career is over. But the longer Minnesota waits, the more difficult it becomes to prepare for life without him. Smith's value extends far beyond tackles, interceptions, or sacks. He understands Brian Flores' system, recognizes formations, communicates adjustments, disguises coverages, and can handle several responsibilities without revealing the defense's intentions before the snap. That type of experience is built in the fire of Sunday games, and it cannot simply be handed to someone else. If Smith does not return, Josh Metellus appears to be the best option to become the communication hub and play in the deep half of the field. But moving Metellus into that role immediately creates another question. Who plays next to him? Jay Ward and Theo Jackson are possibilities, while rookie Jacoby Thomas could become the deciding factor for the entire safety room. Minnesota selected Thomas out of Miami in April's NFL draft because of the potential he brings to the position. However, starting immediately in the NFL is difficult for any rookie safety. Doing it in Flores' aggressive and complicated defense makes the challenge even greater. If Thomas proves he can absorb the system and handle major responsibilities, the Vikings may feel more comfortable moving forward without Smith. If he is not ready, Ward or Jackson must take a significant step, or Minnesota may have to search outside the current roster. And while one leadership question hangs over the defense, another is developing on offense. Former Vikings head coach Brad Childress evaluated Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy by focusing on something more important than arm strength or mobility. Murray has both, but Childress believes the real test for each quarterback will be standing in the pocket and throwing with anticipation. In the NFL, waiting until a receiver is visibly open usually means the throw is already late. The quarterback must release the ball before the separation develops and trust the receiver to run into the opening. That competition could continue through training camp and possibly into the preseason. Minnesota may therefore begin camp without knowing who will command its offense or whether the most experienced voice in its secondary will return. And the quarterback uncertainty has already inspired a proposal that would take this competition in a stunning direction. The possibility of Kyler Murray defeating J.J. McCarthy is already producing something much more dramatic than a simple change to the depth chart. Winston Wilcox of Fansided proposed a hypothetical trade in which the Vikings would send McCarthy to the Indianapolis Colts for Anthony Richardson Sr. and a 7th-round pick in 2027. This needs to be made completely clear. It is not a confirmed negotiation, and there is no report that Minnesota is actively shopping McCarthy. It is a proposed scenario built around what could happen if Murray wins the starting job. But even as speculation, it forces the Vikings to confront a major question. Would losing one competition truly mean the end of McCarthy's future in Minnesota? After an inconsistent season, McCarthy finished with 1,632 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Across 310 passing snaps, he received a 61.8 overall grade from Pro Football Focus. He also produced 19 big-time throws, showing the talent that made him a first-round pick, but recorded 15 turnover-worthy plays. That contrast explains why his evaluation remains so complicated. There have been flashes of a quarterback capable of leading this offense, but there have also been enough mistakes to prevent Minnesota from simply handing him the job. Murray arrived determined to prove he remains an NFL starter after the Arizona Cardinals moved on from him, and many observers expect the former #1 overall pick to win the competition. If that happens, Minnesota must decide whether McCarthy develops behind Murray or becomes a trade candidate. In Indianapolis, McCarthy could initially back up Daniel Jones, who is attempting to regain his pre-injury form after tearing his Achilles. If Jones is not physically ready or fails to return to his previous level, McCarthy could eventually find a path to the starting job. Richardson would come to Minnesota as one of the league's most physically gifted developmental projects. Under this proposal, Murray would start, Carson Wentz would be the second quarterback, and Richardson could work on his mechanics, processing, and consistency under Kevin O'Connell. Because the Vikings are guaranteed to have Murray for only this season, Richardson could theoretically become a future option if O'Connell unlocks his potential. But this is where the proposal becomes difficult to justify. McCarthy remains a former first-round investment who has already shown he can produce big-time throws within Minnesota's offense. Richardson remains a massive projection who would require patience and extensive development. A 7th-round pick does very little to make up for that difference in value. The concept is fascinating because it would place two young and pressured quarterbacks into fresh environments. But moving McCarthy simply because he lost one training camp battle would feel premature. Before Minnesota even considered this deal, the organization would need to believe its relationship with McCarthy had no future. Right now, there is no evidence that the Vikings have reached that point. But if Murray clearly separates himself, this conversation may not disappear as quickly as fans expect. While McCarthy's future is being debated through hypothetical trades, one former Vikings player already has a new team and the clearest opportunity of his career. Jalen Naylor signed a 3-year, $35 million contract with the Las Vegas Raiders, including $18 million guaranteed, a $6 million signing bonus, and an average annual value of approximately $11.67 million. That is a major commitment to a receiver who recorded 29 catches for 444 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2025. Those numbers may not immediately look like the production of a future #1 option, but they came despite poor quarterback play and limited opportunities. In Minnesota, Naylor was always fighting for targets behind Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and T.J. Hawkinson. In Las Vegas, that obstacle may disappear. Sam Warren of The Athletic believes all signs point toward Naylor posting career-best numbers. The Raiders traded top target Jacoby Myers in November and made Naylor their only premium addition at wide receiver during the offseason. That decision may leave some people confused, but it also gives Naylor something he never had in Minnesota, a realistic path to becoming the featured wide receiver. His reunion with Kirk Cousins could make that transition even smoother. The two already spent time together with the Vikings, giving them established chemistry and familiarity. With no solidified number one receiver ahead of Naylor, it is fair to argue that he could begin the season as the Raiders' best wideout. If he breaks out, Minnesota may face questions about whether it underestimated what he could do with a larger role. But the Vikings had Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson demanding targets, so matching Las Vegas's offer for a player who would remain a secondary option would have been difficult to justify. The more urgent concern for Minnesota may be on the other side of the ball. Mo Mautin of Bleacher Report suggested that the Vikings trade a late-round pick in 2027 to the Kansas City Chiefs for cornerback Christian Fulton. Beyond Byron Murphy Jr., the cornerback room remains highly questionable. Isaiah Rodgers allowed an 88.2 passer rating in coverage last season, while James Pierre has only 13 career starts. Fulton appeared in just 8 games last year but allowed an 81.7 passer rating and has 53 career starts. At 27 years old, he could cover the boundary when Murphy moves into the slot or provide experienced insurance if an injury hits. Fulton also shares history with Jefferson. They played together at LSU and won the 2019 National Championship before entering the 2020 NFL Draft. This is only a trade suggestion, not a confirmed pursuit. But unlike the McCarthy proposal, the cost and roster fit make immediate sense. Naylor received an opportunity Minnesota probably could not offer. Fulton, meanwhile, could provide something the Vikings may genuinely need: stability at one of the most uncertain positions on the roster. The Vikings are entering training camp with decisions that could reshape their season. The backfield is depending on health, development, and a better scheme. Harrison Smith controls his own timeline, but his possible absence would place enormous pressure on an unsettled secondary. J.J. McCarthy remains at the center of a competition guaranteed to generate speculation, although trading him for Anthony Richardson would be a tremendous gamble. Jalen Naylor could be heading toward a breakout in Las Vegas, while Christian Fulton represents a potentially realistic defensive addition. Which would be Minnesota's biggest mistake, trusting this backfield, losing patience with McCarthy, or entering the season without another cornerback? Leave your answer in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay tuned. Skol Vikings, let's go.